Okay, everybody see my screen?
Yes, that's perfect. Wonderful.
Okay, awesome. So I like to talk about tax in a proactive way so that you can see that this is more about the mind and it's also a way of living. And taxes is really usually something that people think of in a reactive way. And what we are being taught over the years is to do this year end and to kind of like catch up and take care of things. And really take care of it from a tax perspective versus from the beginning, which technically would be a bookkeeping foundational standpoint. So I'm going to take you to understand things from a global perspective, and I hope you enjoy. Uh, why should you listen to me, and who the dang am I to really say all of these things and really get hit the ground running like I'm telling you? So from when I was small, I was inspired around money because, you know, life for me was always like a struggle. I saw how things were hard for my parents. So I translated that into the world as if money was hard, paying taxes was hard. And all around me, business, I always saw how people were taking down buildings. And I was like, those mean men and few women in between, of which was at that point. And as I got to appreciate the field and really see what was happening, I was like, wow, you get to build more places for people to live, and it created more jobs, and there was so many different things, and it ended up becoming a way of life for me. And through that, our firm has been ranked top 18 in New York for the past I think it's at least 4 years now, and I've won multiple different awards on a personal level and the business. I'm from Brooklyn. I now live in New Jersey, and I have a lot of fun habits on the side. One thing that lately I've realized with people that they love to hear is about my swimming. Um, I've gone through some injuries, and my doctor has told me around swimming. And it's a whole different full body exercise around swimming. And it really gets you in the mind to think on really what you want to create. And I'm always embracing in different things on how to live. And if you're here and you're open to sharing, I'm curious what you guys, you know, do in your free time. It's always fun, you know, cooking, shopping, you know, all of these different things. And then for exercise, there's nature, yoga, Pilates, you know, just to embrace a little bit more. Um, our company is on a mission. We're here to help people see that there's a whole heap more around money, tax, and business. And what I mean by that is taking the dollar and really, really stretching it. So just like we would do meal prep, we want to prepare our money for our mind around the money. We want to prepare our thoughts and our plans. Because what happens is that it's a ripple effect on our family. So I mentioned I have 2 kids. Now, what I've built goes to my kids, and they have to know how to handle it too. Because when my day comes to pass on, you know, wealth planning strategies and all of these different things, it's great to give it to them, but for everybody to understand this too, that it really builds into a way of life. It's just a whole new way of thinking. And that's how I've built my life. So who do we help? We help service-based providers, but what we love absolute best is our real estate industry. And it has nothing been more touching, I will say, because helping people create the wealth and did I just do something? Okay. Uh, is really have been so empowering. So I'm just curious, what's one thing you've always wondered about taxes and you were afraid to ask? Now, it may not stoop your mind right now, and you might be not willing to put it in the chat, but at least write it down on paper when you're listening to this. Is like, what's that rolling thought of kind of like, is this deductible? How do I take care of this? And really start your mind thinking. You know, when I was looking to invest and start my own development, I was like, how is this really going to play into my life? how I was going to put the money for different things. So follow those thoughts and let it lead you. But stop letting the fear lead you, and take that fear and let's build it into curiosity. So before we dig into this material, kind of aligned with where you are. Like, what made you show up to this presentation? What made you want to listen? There's so much hype about taxes, but what made you say, like, today is the day? And whatever that is, own that, and let's chat about that, and let's take it from there, because chances are there's a lot there of what you're looking for, and I would love to change your life around this. So what you're going to learn today is actionable steps to plan. You're also going to uncover tax assumptions that many people have that inflate their bill. You're also going to have ways to leverage missed deductions, gain confidence around extensions, and explore 6 tax strategies that are really no-brainers that you really can get the ground running and maximize savings after it all. So let's just think about what's planning, right? Lots of times, again, our industry is built around reactive versus a retroactive or a proactive thinker. Planning is a way to really look at your life holistically and say, my wife is going to have a baby this year. I think I want to buy a house. I think I want to buy a second house. I want to invest. I want to increase retirement. Somebody has passed on. All of these different things, medical expenses, anything that is happening in your life, you want your mind to start juicing up and really thinking about it. Now, why does it matter? It reduces stress. Let's just call it that. And it avoids last minute scrambles. Now, the last minute scrambles, I'll tell you what happens in tax season. Now, that night on the day of the 15th, whether it's on time or extension, it's out of the world panic zone for the clients that are on the other end. And we literally are up with our clients until the end, because that's just how we roll. And to see the nerves on how it goes, but what happens is that it's a lesson learned to never be there again when things start to almost like take you down. You want to allocate your resources effectively. I remember when I started to plan for myself, you know, what happened was, at first I was like, this isn't possible. Like, I remember when one of my first mentors said to me around planning, and I was like, there's no way. Like, I thought he was like lying, and I didn't do it. However, when the tax bill came for me, you betcha, the first thing I did was call him back and say, how quickly can I sign and put my money down? And it hit me harder because I had the bill and I had to plan and coming up with all of that, but I never looked back. And that is my mission here today, to help you look forward and start to think and to implement. Now, what is it and why do you need to take it on? Planning now, at the end of the day, it saves you thousands of dollars. That first year that if I would have done it, $12,500 at that time I would have saved. We had a client just this past December. By her signing up, we saved her. No joke. This was just off the bat within like the first 4 days. It was $32,678 and so much cents. And it literally blew her mind, because she was in a situation where she wanted to provide for her family. And the magic, what happened here was with this is that we literally just put it into a medical savings account, and now her sickness became into a tax deduction, providing for her family, and her stress reduced. All by planning ahead and looking at this, by taking that step. Look, the pressure was on her, the fire was on her a bit, but with that fire, she benefited and literally changed her life in the matter of seconds. Now, the action item for this is review your finances for 2024, because it's going to start getting those juices rolling and the ball rolling, and kind of like, maybe I want this. I heard this actionable step today. I heard this strategy today. And really start to think and take your time a little bit with it too. Now, there's assumptions that sometimes get mixed in. Like think of a stew, right? When you put in a stew, we put in all sorts of things in this stew. We put in veggies, we put in the meat, and sometimes, I feel like I want a little bit more spice. And what happens is that the old beliefs start to come in that we just don't think it's possible. However, when you have someone leading you versus you being led, there's a whole different story to this. And there's a whole different way of attending taxes that it becomes something like, this can be done because you're following a roadmap, or I also call it your pathway to the garden. And your pathway to the garden is a whole different way of thinking so that it only gets easier and easier and easier. And I'm going to tell you a story. Just in October, I had ankle surgery. And my doctor told me, Margo, no weight bearing exercises or actions or anything for 10 days. Maybe he said 2 weeks. And I just couldn't even fathom processing it. When I was in it, the level of pain that I was in just this past October was just over the roof. However, I look back at it now is that I was able to focus on the healing and the recovery because I had everything in place. I had my team covered, I had the practice covered, I moved my calls, I had people back me up. But most of all, me in this situation, I had a way to go. Now, I want to take this story a little bit further. The power of planning is that lots of times we can depend on health insurance, which is awesome. We never take that away. The way I planned for myself was I had a health savings account in addition because we all know and we hear from our financial advisors, right? So many months in the bank, cover the mortgage. And some people say 6, some people say 12, some people say 3, depending on where you are in the map. Whatever it is, it's all good. The power is start somewhere. So you never know when these things are going to happen, that you now need to pull out like the magic cards and get this all to work. And I remember the day I was coming out of it and really starting to walk again. And I was like, it was almost like a fog. But I remember saying to myself, I didn't even worry about money and the business because I built a team and I built for my family a structure because I knew I had such faith in the system. And I want you to start believing in that and the power of these stories today. So the assumptions can result in missed opportunities because we think in disbelief for stepping in, right? So lots of times these opportunities, like remember my first time, I was like, no way, Mr. X, my first mentor. And he was like, Margo, like, don't do that. And I was like, you're just like kidding me. And he wasn't kidding me. And I paid for that ever since, but that was my ticket. That was like my debt to learning how to move forward in a more powerful way, which really transformed the practice into what's now Heartfelt CFO and Tax Services. So the action step around this is what's very overlooked and very undermined is the power of bookkeeping. Bookkeeping, people think about it as, oh, I can do it. Oh, it's just recording transactions. In a lot of ways, all of those are true. However, the power of the consistency of it, the quality, the health of the information, for example, knowing that your expenses sit on the right financial statement. You'd be surprised. Sometimes people put expenses on what's called the balance sheet, which is what you own and what you owe. And expenses, we can't put on that because it's not a part of our foundationals of accounting. And it could be we didn't know, it could be we didn't hire the right person, or we hired for different reasons. It doesn't matter. But the power of bookkeeping is where all this begins. It's kind of like in construction, right? They have walls, and those walls, and I'm gonna botch this on how I'm going to because I'm not in construction, but all the layers before they close the wall. Until those layers happen, they can't close the wall, right? And what happens is if they close the wall and they didn't put all the different things that need to go into it, it's not going to be the same. It'll just be paper. And that's the same thing with bookkeeping. We want to put in the transactions, we want to categorize them properly, we want to reconcile and be able to look at a monthly report. Now that's basic bookkeeping. And I call it like, it's like your 12 steps to a awesome tax return, simply because we're tracking down everything. It's not later, it's not tomorrow, it's not the rainy day, it's happening on a consistent basis. Now, people get caught up in bookkeeping, in categorizing expenses, and I want to trim this down a bit on how to help you look at tracking expenses. So tracking expenses, there's a way that you need to do it for like your daily business, and then there's a way for tax purposes. Now, the most common question is always, is this tax deductible? Open up your tax return, and not to see that a professional, we can't go through it, but start to get friendly with your tax return and just see what happens. Now, if you come in there and you see what happens, you'll get to see how the power of the depth of the explanations. So meaning you're going to see what's the deductions. And don't be afraid to ask what the lines are. We Google so many things. Why not Google some of the things on your own tax return? Now, it could be scary opening up your own tax return without a professional at first, but just look and see what happens. Now, Schedule C is basically your best friend on seeing your itemized deductions there. And lots of times the words are as simple as what they are. And then you can stack it with bigger strategies that we're going to get to. Now, what assumptions are increasing your tax bill? Let's take it a different way. Bookkeeping solves these problems by just making a strategy and making an intention and a decision. So the first thing is organized records, helping track income and expenses consistently, ensuring nothing is missed. So tracking income is as simple as it is. It could get tricky when there's in and out on how to categorize it, or if you refund money, something, of that nature, but take it for what it is. Income is the bringing in and expenses are taking out. Now, literally doing that along with your credit card and your debit card, because the debit comes out of the bank statement, we want all of these. One of the most common things that I see is that the credit card statements are missed, simply because it's intertwined with other businesses. It might be intertwined with personal, I had a dental client, and actually she's still our client. What am I talking about? And she just had this love for Bloomies. And where are all my women out there who love Bloomingdale? And her hubby was the one who hired me, and because she just couldn't do it. So her stress pool was going to Bloomingdale. So she couldn't understand why it bothered him. She couldn't understand why he knew it all. And I said to her, why are you doing this on the business card? And she was like, I go on my lunchtime, it's right across the street. It was kind of like an innocent answer. So I said to her, you hired me for just the business. Like, I don't even need to know this. So what ended up happening is that it ended up being into something bigger than what it really was for her personal needs of what she was doing. But let's stay with me here on this. Is the issue for her is that it wasn't putting the right value on the business, because they were looking to stack this dental practice, and which was in one of the properties that they have, and the value on it was getting distorted because previously these purchases were not categorized correctly. Now, journal entries can help, distributions accounts can help, but think of those things as more band-aids or like fixes, kind of like a repair, than necessarily a way of looking at business from a regular standpoint. So meaning, it's something simple to literally separate it. So what did I do for her? I took out her wallet and I literally put it on each side and I labeled it personal and business, because she was like, I can see how busy she was. And she was just like, Margo, she goes, this was life changing. It wasn't just life changing that she got that separation on the storm between her and her husband. She also realized with her business what she was looking to do. It was like standing in her own way, that we were just like, hey, let's take a step back and look at the situation. Because chances are, lots of times we're doing things that we don't realize and we're not mindful of it. But if we start to be mindful of what we're doing and we build it into this, I'll tell you, it becomes a whole heap easier. And I'm going to give you a story. So in December, we had a different client of ours, and she was not on health insurance. Now, when we were doing her bookkeeping, we were just like, why is her medical expenses so high? Is she just choosing doctors that were all the time out of the network? Like, what was it? She just had this belief that health insurance was so expensive. She was going through life changes, and she just had this belief that was running the show. I said to her, sweetie pie, let's call health insurance today. And she got it. So she went from spending, I think it was like $12,000 to $14,000 a year to like, I think it was like $300 a month, to the tune of, it was like $274. It was like some wild number like that. So I said to her, you know what the good news with this is? We now have health insurance that's deductible. Your health savings budget is that $12,000, and it's still tax deductible. However, now you're going to do it in a more mindful way, instead of carrying all of this thought and belief and fear around it that was running her, of kind of like, how much does this doctor charge and that doctor charge? It just was so mind-blowing. And if we just think sometimes that, not just do it only for the tax dollar, because it's also for our family, a whole heap more can happen. So let's continue. You get a more accurate tax reporting. So like I was telling you, it was like her business numbers around the business value, and also helping us calculate the taxes. So estimated payments is a big thing, depending on if you're on a W-2 or you're taking draws, which is the full amount from your bank account. Now, it's easy to spot deductible expenses when you have bookkeeping. You get to like literally go through, we have one client right now who's going through this recalculation with the partners. And I tell you, the storm between them, because they didn't have bookkeeping to guide them all, it just was so unfortunate. But the storms are calming down now because there's a way of looking at things, and it's not everyone at each other. It just reduces the volume. So cash flow visibility, we talk about strategies and all of these different things, but I kid you not, bookkeeping just takes care of cash flow. How? We just know what we have. It's really as simple as that. We just know what we have, and we get to make the decision. Are we going to spend more than what we have? Are we going to borrow with intention? Are we just going to borrow because we just want to and we're on this spritz, and take it from there? And like I can't preach enough, proactive tax planning. There's nothing better than an advisory session of where you can show a client how much that they can save and turn what they're doing already into something more magical. And I'm going to tell you another story. So a few years ago, one of our male clients signed on, and he was investing and doing all of these things. And then he happened to just mumble under his breath around redoing his basement. And in addition, he was starting this side business. Somehow when clients meet me, it becomes like a stack of things that we have to take apart. And it's just really cool to see it unfold. So he happened to let me know that he was doing the basement. And I was like, what? What's happening there? And he was like, yeah, my wife wants to do it because of this, the children, da. And then he just literally still mumbling about this and not really telling me. And I was like, hi, can you talk clearer about this? So he ended up telling it to me. So his basement, it was really going to turn into a home office, which I'm going to talk about today. And see, here's where I go off script, going on the stories when we talk about that in a little bit. So missed deductions and major expenses, home office expenses, business related to travel and meals, because it could become tedious on how we do it. However, if you remember from the beginning of the presentation, I was telling you how in bookkeeping, it's your support tool, it's your guide, it's your journey to this to make things a whole heap easier. Educational expenses and retirement contributions, which a lot of us love, come on, right? Now, major expenses, purchases of equipment, vehicles, large charitable donations. Now, for example, if you purchase a new vehicle for your business, you want to make sure it's categorized correctly. And chances are, what I see more times than not, it happens on the personal side and not the business, and then we have to do an amendment. Just saying out there, try to be mindful, or at least keep like a note tab if you're not going to do bookkeeping, because we want you to stop being in your own way and seeing that this is truly a way of life. Now, the action step here is bundle your deductions and actions and expenses strategically to reduce taxable income. Start to think about it. Even just take notes in your notepad around what's happening. So extensions for 1099s and W-2, the deadline was the 31st. Now, why does this matter? We want to avoid penalties and late filings. I'm just going to go quickly into this to just explain what a 1099 is and a W-2, because at the entity levels, this can get rather complicated. So a W-2 is something simple where your taxes are taken out of your check, and at the time those taxes are given to the proper authorities to pay the taxes. Now, we're used to that in the context around if we work for somebody else. Now, what happens if we work for ourselves? We could get a W-2 from our own entity. Let's hold off on that for a minute. Now, what happens on a 1099, and what even does that mean? A 1099 literally means that you literally took out a draw, you took out money, and you did not pay any taxes at the time. So how is that considered? There's so many different levels with that, but at the base level, what happens is that chances are, if it's outside of an entity, we're going to pay double Social Security and Medicare by not having an entity to cover us, which would mean like an S corp. Literally off the bat, it saves on double Social Security and Medicare. But what happens is we have to have an entity to house this. And what does that mean? We're not doing it under Margo Masri. It's Margo Masri LLC. That's an S corp, for instance. Now, when's the proper time to do your own W-2? When is how much? And all of these things, we'll get there over time. But from a base level, I just wanted to explain that. Now, to know this just from an action standpoint, review your records, use software to streamline. This is where QuickBooks can help you, meaning people who you hired from on a contractor basis, because we need to give them a 1099 at the end of the year, and you want to work with a professional to ensure compliance. Lots of times people miss this step. However, I'll tell you this. There's nothing better to going to sleep at night when you know you've done by the code. There's people out there, and I'm not saying things are bad or wrong. What I'm saying is that just following the code, it's just a whole heap easier because it's not coming to you later. I have one client who every year, he had like over 200 1099s. However, he didn't really, even though he really needed to give it to them, he had his own reasons on why he wasn't going to give them. But it came back to haunt him. And I say haunt him because we had to backpedal through the years and get through all the things that were coming up. So here are 6 strategies that you may be missing, and I'm going to talk about them so that maybe this applies to you, maybe one, maybe all, and hopefully this is something that you feel that you can work with. So it's called an accountable plan. It's called a home office deduction. There's the Employee Achievement Award. That one's my favorite. And the Augusta strategy, hiring your child. Actually, I think that one's my favorite. Home gain exclusion. Now, why do these matter? They can provide substantial savings. However, think of it this way. Looking back is so much harder than planning ahead. So something happens where something like the Augusta, where it needs to be planned, it just becomes easier where it's implemented these few minutes in the week versus necessarily going back and trying to make things happen. It can be done, however, it's more common in that tune. It's something that we're trying to make a bigger stand for clients in this field, because it just becomes where you're gaining more money in your pocket, and that stress and present time, you get to make more money on what's happening instead of looking in the backwards, which we can't change. The steps with this is look what strategies in your situation may apply and take it from there. Now, some of this you may be, I just want to do bookkeeping and not the strategies. That's okay. This is to give you a well-rounded information today and education so that you can have more at your fingertips. Ready to dive in? Okay. So accountable plan is when we reimburse employees for out-of-pocket expenses. And it's as non-taxable cash flow. That is like music to our ears, right? Now, what are the requirements for this? You have to have a business connection and the documentation. Now, I want to talk about documentation for a second, because documentation is taken for granted lots of times, that people are not taking it seriously. And what do I mean by that? It's overlooked, or they think that they lost it, or they're not paying attention to it. What happens is let's not look in the back. Let's look on how we can move forward, because lots of times the challenge and the job backwards can hold us back. There are cases when we need to go backwards. Like, I was actually just working with a client yesterday, and what we did was we worked together with our tax team with what was going on with her, and we were really able to backpedal with her and really look at things from an objective standpoint to be in her best interest. Ideally, everyone is current. Ideally, everyone does bookkeeping, but life doesn't always happen that way. So we want proper documentation. We want to return excess reimbursements. And the step here is to have a written plan. Now, having this as a document and a plan, it really just puts things into place. It's kind of like what happened at the beginning of the year, right? Everyone's like, I'm going to get fit, I'm going to make all this money, and then it just slowly dies down. Steps, actions, vision, saving money, making money, all of these different things is every day. It becomes a part of every day. It's not something you decide once, and then it's kind of like, whoof, magic, it all comes. Over time, we get to build on these things. Now, lots of times with this, with the clients, I tell you around accountable plan, what gets messy a little bit is how our team is taking care of it. So what we do is that we really just dial into that plan on how we're writing it so that it's clear for everybody. And in the employee handbook, we talk about it there too, so that it's easy. And then when things come up, we curate the strategy so that going forward, it's easier. We don't really sit into that strife. What we do is that we see what happens and move forward, take care of the situation and move on. But reimbursing clients, the team, for their expenses is so, so important. Also, what I've seen happen in my clients is that the team themselves, for this, just believe, kid you not, means more to them than their actual salary, like these incidentals, that it becomes something so, so powerful. That because it's an add-on top of rent, on top of mortgage, you don't know what's going on in people's life. Home office deduction. This one is so fun. This one is so fun because there's this voodoo out there that, you know, you're going to get caught and all of these things. Now, it could be. Yeah, let's just meet it where it's at. It could be. If we overdo things where we like take advantage or we do things where they're not real and like we're really lying and it becomes not reasonable, then it could be. However, from a standpoint of what's actual, right? Because bookkeeping is your tool along the way, what happens is that these things become more possible. Now, it must, and I can't say this enough, it must be used exclusively, regularly for business. It also needs to include a separate structure on your property. The next step here is to document usage and calculate eligible expenses. I just realized the time. I'm going to pick up the pace. Okay. Employee Achievement Award. Now, we deduct gifts of tangible personal property to employees. Awards must be tangible, not cash, and must not exceed $400 per employee annually. And the next step here, again, is to, in compliance, we always want to document this. Augusta is my favorite. Rent your home business tax-free for up to 14 days. Can I get an amen? I mean, come on. How cool is that? Now, for fair market rental rates, what you do is on the common sites for your area, you go on and what things are actually being rented for. We save that. That will help with the documentation standpoint. 14 days. Think about that. How cool is that? You get the home office deduction, you get to rent it out for the 14 days, and it's just magical. Now, when clients, I know when I first did this, because my whole office wasn't the whole house, it really takes an effect. And it really changed the trajectory of things, because sometimes it's just better to do things in the house versus it is to go to a place like all of these types of meetings. Hiring your child. This one, I think I say everything is my favorite, because tax law and accounting and business, it's just all amazing in different ways when you realize that there's nothing to be fearful in money. And I really believe that, because when you see how it can work for you tax-wise, you don't pay taxes, and I kid you not, and it's working for you instead of against you. Because now I want to just take a minute and just remember all of the different things that you've learned today. It needs somewhere to house. So she said very important is like, does your CPA approve? And you have to run it by them. What we do is we look at the situation as a whole to see when's a good time to sell properties. However, without bookkeeping, you can't do a lot of these things, because where your cash sits, how it's going to affect things. What I see more times than not, people are just taking, I don't like this saying, but taking from Peter to pay Paul, and from Paul to pay Peter, or taking loans and betting on things, and not really thinking things through with a professional to help you get led. So when you have a balance sheet that runs this, literally, where you get to look at all your money, it's the best. Because now, let's say you took a loan. What happens with the loan, I don't want to say the balance doesn't matter, but when you're taking with intention and you're acting on that intention every single month, it's going to get paid back. There's no hype. The hype comes when the agreements are not set at the beginning, the terms. I'll tell you, the third quarter of last year and second quarter, we were working with this architect/contracting partnership from one of our, investor clients, and they were at odds. Like, I literally thought one day that it was going to get uglier than uglier. And just, it ended up coming down to is that they just had different intents. And they were acting from a place of what they knew. They were acting from a place of what they knew. They were acting from a place that they knew, and they were just at different places. And there was no place to get the correct information. So the steps here is set a payroll and document the work performed so that hiring your child is possible. Now, I'm going to tell you a fun story with this, because I just realized I didn't explain that. So deducting wages to pay your child is legitimate. Now, when I first started my business, actually, no, it's not when I started. It was, let's say, 2/3 in from this period of when this recording is happening. I just happened to ask my oldest for help because I thought he was a genius and he could. And there were certain things that I was just like, hey, can you just do it? And then when I learned about this strategy, what ended up happening was he ended up learning the value of a dollar in a different way. Meaning, like, it's not just mom giving it to him. It's not just mom being like, hey, can I have X dollars? You know, he ended up learning what it was. He ended up using his genius zone where his confidence started to build and to grow. Now, a parent-child relationship is very valuable, and to hold that is something very unique. And over time, you learn how to do that more and more and more in this setting. Because again, remember what I said at the beginning, wealth strategies is only as good if the people who we're building it for really understand it. Because if you're trying to do something and everyone else is not on board, it becomes harder. And I'm going to tell you another story. Sorry about that. One of my crystals fell. I'm a big crystal fan. So one of our clients, the winning got ahead of him. And what ended up happening was when the winning got ahead of him, he ended up backpedaling a lot because he took a step out of the plan, not because it was out of the plan, but winning got to him. And it ended up stepping on his relationship. But the powerful thing in this is that he realized is that he wasn't bringing his partner in on board the entire time. And as he was trying to build the mental health practice, the entities, and for some reason right now, we're in this, a lot of our professionals are doing mental health practices. It used to be a journey of a lot of shopping centers. It used to be just rentals where we go into these phases. It's just really interesting. But the powerful thing here where I want you to know is that he realized is that he was climbing, but everyone wasn't coming with him. And he wasn't explaining it to them. And it could be hard because we're at this height. They're not necessarily at the height. They're not necessarily like lower than us, but they're not coming along with us. So hiring your children, it sets a path. You become like an example. You don't have to tell, you're leading. And it just becomes another thing that happens of a way of life. And now it's a ripple effect in your own way for wealth strategies to come on and on. Home gain exclusion is up to $500,000 from selling from your primary residence. You must have lived for at least 2 of the 5 years. And the military personnel have extended timelines on that in case anybody is there. And the next steps of that is to track improvements and calculated adjustment basis. So I wanted to give you an example after this all of what a tax planning request list. I happen to realize that this challenges clients a lot is this list. So I wanted you to have an idea. You'll need individual tax returns. You'll need individual business returns. We on average ask for at least 3 years and access to online accounting file for the prior years, assuming you have one. Sometimes clients of ours haven't had. Entity agreements, we want to know the buy and sell documents, all of those different things, and the actual entity creations. Now, the entity creations is important because I'll kid you not, we had a client one time who was swapping and buying and doing all of these things. He thought he had an S, and we didn't check the paperwork, and what happened was, because it was in the planning stage, where he was, it didn't happen, and ends up the S Corp didn't go through. It just was a whole heap of different things that were happening. Additional documents, the property settlement sheets, retirement planning documents, personal financial sheets. At this point, if you're in this field, I can't tell you enough, personal bookkeeping has been almost like mandatory for most of our clients because sometimes the money comes from there depending on where they take loans and all of those things. And a schedule of business ownership, and then the 2553 to know that you have the S. At the end of the day, planning does reduce the liability and it maximizes savings. For me, I say it's life-changing. Utilizing strategies and the accountable plan, it's a go-to. So everybody here, what we want to give as a gift, assuming you want it, is a bookkeeping starter kit. It may sound a little quirky, it may sound a little nerdy, but this is something that we want everybody to have, because the first thing everybody says is, let's get organized. You are organized. Schedule a consult, take action from the notes of the workshop, and feel free to listen to today's workshop again, because I gave a lot of information here today. As a bonus, for the first 10 action takers, I'm offering personalized resources and guidance tailored to your business of the most pressing issues. We just began the year, so I want to help escalate that and bring that forward and move the needle. And this is typically reserved for our special level or our diamond levels. However, today, I want 2025 to be the best year ever for you. And to maximize savings, again, take the stress, reduce deductions, stay organized, plan ahead, and know that you're maximizing savings. We also have, instead of that bookkeeping starter kit, you could have both, whatever you want. We actually created our own organizer around this all, which is literally here where you see everything, the vision board, the checklist, the tax deadlines, the payroll, planning for the business, and so on. It has all of it built in. And we have all the links for this. We wrote it out. I hope you'll join in. And as always, I thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If there's something more you want to talk about or ask me, I would be so grateful to help you. And feel free to follow us. And I look forward to talking to you all again soon.
Wonderful. That was great, Margo. And I love that offer at the end. That's really how generous of you to be able to provide that. We will make sure to include that link and your contact information in the recording to all the registrants so that they can get that as well. Oh, nice. Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Sharina, for saying that. I think we've got one question. If anyone else has questions, please make sure to put them in the chat. Malep asks, passive activity loss rules do not help folks with W-2 ordinary income. Yeah. What is the best way to get access to passive activity loss for those folks who are getting started with passive investments?
So I would say it starts the passive activity that's definitely at the distribution level with the right entity, and bookkeeping, I would say, from our standpoint, so that you can stick with that and manage your activity, because passive activity at the end of the day, you may not be on the W-2, but you're still going to be at estimates and to really see what's going. So walking into a comprehensive tax plan along with bookkeeping the right entity is going to be a no-brainer to aid all of those steps.
Wonderful. Anyone else? We have a wonderful resource here you can take advantage of. I know she gave a lot of wonderful information. I love all the praise you're getting in the chat. Thanks, Eduardo. Thanks, Olu.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you liked it. Thank you, Olu. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it too. I took a lot of time to prepare this. I was looking what everyone was doing, and I wanted it to complement the other speakers today, but while stand out a bit so that you had a basis and foundation to build on.
Outstanding. You're also very active on LinkedIn, so I would encourage folks to make sure to give her a follow too. I'm a big LinkedIn evangelist, so I love other people, especially women who decide to give so generously in terms of information and content on the platform. I think it's just wonderful. So, all right, well, if there are no other questions, Margo, thank you again so much for being so generous with your time and knowledge. I've even gotten some texts that said that how much people like you, so I encourage folks to reach out, and of course, we'll send your contact info and the recording to folks. Thank you again.
You're so welcome.
Everyone, thank you again for joining the Tax Smart Investor Summit. It's been an absolute delight to have you today, and you can expect the recordings here in the next couple of days. The DST presentation may need to be vetted just because there's some SEC compliance. You know, they just have to do checks. We're always very compliant, but don't worry, we will get the recordings out to you all, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks again for coming, and congrats on investing in yourself. Bye for now, everyone. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate the feedback. Have a great day. And Kishore, my pleasure, my absolute pleasure. Thanks, Perlette. Great to see you. Bye for now, everyone. Have a great day.